This is the Ortho Wire Podcast. I'm doing something new here. I'm doing something, I called it Live Wire. And I'm going to start trying to interview the big movers and shakers of the ortho industry. And this morning we're going to be talking to Micheal Wright of the... he had come to our DLAT conference back in earlier this year in spring and gave us a... He was on our orthodontic forum, and he gave a presentation over his EasyRx web software, which was very interesting. His background, he's from OrthoDent Lab in Buffalo, New York. He has a bachelor's in business administration, a CDT in orthodontics. Some of his lab details, his dad started the business 30 years ago. He grew up in the lab, I'm sure, smelling monomer and other things like that. Yeah. And then he started when he was a driver, and he worked his way up. This may have changed since spring, but 15 employees, 11 technicians, 3 office staff, 1 driver. And that, well, let me go ahead and introduce him. Again, my name is Kay Tippett of the retainerdesigner.com or the Ortho Wire Podcast. So let me go ahead and bring in Micheal Wright from OrthoDent and EasyRx.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me. This is really cool that we can do all this.
Yeah, I thought it was cool.
Yeah, when you first let me know about it, I was really excited about it, just because it's a different way of actually having a conversation with people. So I'm excited to actually be a part of it. So it's really cool. I hope we can learn something today. We'll talk about some things. I really want to get into some of the lab stuff, and of course we can talk about the software. But just like you said, you get 2 lab guys together and just start kind of shooting the breeze a little bit. You know, it's you never really have that opportunity. So this is really cool. So I appreciate it. It's awesome.
Yeah, thanks for being my guinea pig. And
yeah, perfect. I love it.
And hanging in there as I try to figure out this new Google Hangout thing. And I'll try to monitor any chat questions that come in. I may not have set it up right. So, see, I wrote down some notes here. Let's see. Oh, I did everything on my notes. So
perfect.
How's the lab business?
Yeah, let's start with that. So the lab business, it's definitely changing. I will say that, and if you've experienced it, a lot of other people are experiencing it. A lot of people are seeing maybe not less work, but different kinds of work. So the digital age is coming upon really, really fast, and it's coming a lot faster than we've ever experienced before. Only because, the past, however long retainers have been made, they've been made a certain way. A prescription is filled out, it's sent to the lab, and the lab creates something. And it's been that way for decades. That's how it's always been. And now things are changing, and they're changing really, really fast. We can talk a little bit about just 3D printing.
Yes, because you
3D
got a
printer.
new 3D printer.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, we got a 3D printer, and if you think about it, if you guys have ever seen it, it's just like a big box, and you send CAD/CAM data to it, and it prints out anything you want. So you can print out models, you can print out Star Wars characters, you can print out anything. So
You've done that already, haven't you?
Yeah, maybe. Maybe we print out wrenches, and just there's cool things that you can actually make. So the way that the process is happening, it's becoming very different, and I think that it's going to change the landscape of the entire industry. Scanners are coming out, the intraoral scanners, so we're getting close to replacing impressions, and that's kind of the driver of it all. You're getting, scans are going to replace impressions because they're going to be able to get better information to the lab. They're going to be more accurate. So all of that, doctors are starting to look into. They're making big capital investments into scanners and trying to replace impressions.
And they're selling them like crazy. They're pushing it. The manufacturers are really pushing it toward the doctors. I see ads every day of here's a scanner, and even a model scanner. They're pushing those.
Right. So it's changing, and it's changing fast. It's not as if it's slow movement. We're talking. The 3D printing it's really sci-fi kind of technology, and all of a sudden that's becoming, that will be the mainstream, for dental laboratories. First it started out with milling, but when it comes to ortho, we're not going to be doing any milling, so we're just going to skip that process.
Right.
We're going to go right to 3D printing. So things are happening fast, and it's going to be, I'm not sure how we're going to be able to deal with it. It's hard. We're transitioning into becoming a digital laboratory because people are expecting it. I think the clients are looking at it, and they want to be secure that they can move forward in their technology and that the lab's ready to go too. So those are definitely the challenges that are coming out. So the lab business, I don't see that we're making retainers differently, and that will probably be for a while. So
until they invent that wire bending robot.
Right, exactly. That wire bending machine that we've all thought about.
Yes.
When you're bending wire at 9 o'clock at night, you're like, man, I wish there's a machine that could do this. Maybe I'm the only one that thinks that, but.
Oh yeah, I've thought of it a lot. 2 in the morning, I'm like, man, there could be a machine bending this right now and just be ready for me in the morning to put acrylic on it.
Right. Because everything could change, with 3D printing. Maybe you print out clasps or something. Who knows what'll happen?
Yeah, I'd never even thought about that until the other part of my lab is Crown and Bridge. The owners of the lab have a Crown and Bridge side, and they have a 3D milling machine. And so I've been kind of following the CAD/CAM part, and then they been following 3D printing of wax, and now 3D printing of metal copings, and then that's when ding! I was like, oh, they could probably do wires, and it may not be long now, and each lab has to mentally prepare for what's going to come forward.
Right. What if you could print out, an entire RPE with bands that are on it?
Oh, I didn't even think about the screw that works and everything. Cause
exactly.
That one printing company that came, Stratasys.
Right.
They came to the DLAT and they printed out that crescent wrench, and the thing actually opened and closed. Man, that would be amazing.
Right.
Or even bands. Yeah.
Yeah. So the bands actually fit perfectly. So you're not trying to. I think banding is really hard. I think that's one of the hardest things we have to do, because we have to somehow figure out what kind of tooth is underneath this plaster, and there is no tooth that's underneath there.
Right.
It's not as if we're taking away plaster and we're trying to find a tooth, and that's the hardest part, is we have to try to figure it out. I'd love tools to be able to do that.
Oh yeah, that's what when you train someone, you're shaping the tooth, and you got to picture it going all the way down. And I thought that was one of the drawbacks of 3D printing until I saw the webinar with Don Inman, and they printing impressions.
Right.
And I actually have a picture of you, and I guess I wasn't paying attention then, but there's a picture I have of you giving that presentation. There's a example of a printed impression. I was like,
yeah, I know. And then
I put two and two together finally.
Yeah, I stole it from Don, but I did tell him about it afterwards. But the good thing about Don is he always shares a lot of the stuff that he has. He's one of the pioneers in this too, trying to do a lot of printing, pushing it. So it's he's preparing. We're all kind of preparing. So that's why it's it's going to be interesting to see what this landscape is like in 3 to 5 years. I think it's going to be totally different. Which is, I think it's exciting. I'm a younger guy. I love technology. We grew up in this Facebook age, this Google Plus age here, and we're always online. We're on computers, and there's got to be something where I can do my job with a computer and help me with it. It's just kind of how I was brought up. It's how we were all brought up. Doing all this stuff. Some of the stuff that you're doing, trying to make it easier online, and all of that. So that's kind of, it's pretty, maybe we can use that as a segue to actually jump into EasyRx, because that's kind of what we were thinking about too. So, EasyRx, just a brief background on it. It's a web-based system, so it's all in the cloud. It's like a website. It's a really big website, if you want to think about it like that. And with, when you're able to interact and do things on that, they call it an application. So it's essentially a web application.
Yes. Yeah, that's the new thing, is web application.
Right.
And I had thought about this 2002, and I bought Adobe CS, the very first. And I tried to make a website where you could make your own prescription,
Right.
and I couldn't do it. I was like, not that the technology wasn't there, which it probably wasn't. It's just I just didn't have the know-how. And that was one of my questions was how did you get the idea, and what was the first step toward that idea?
Sure. Okay, so my job when I first was getting started, I was a tech. I learned everything, and one of the positions that we had at the lab was a designer. And that designer would get cases in, and they'd review the mold, see if there was any distortion. They'd look at the prescription. They'd make changes. They're trying to take this doodle that the doctor would give and try to understand what's on there. A lot of times things are getting redrawn or they're redone because we do everything graphically. So when we do a labial bow, we draw what the bow looks like on a set of teeth. So the technician knows that they're doing a 3-to-3 bow or a 4-to-4 bow or a 2-to-2 as opposed to reading it. Every time that they're reading it, it would take them longer. They're making mistakes because we're visual.
Right.
We're able to visually see things and understand. So and I think that's how it was taught in school. My dad, learned all this stuff. That's from his dad, who was, that's how they did prescriptions, and that's how they're taught in school how to do them, by drawing it out. Because there's thousands of combinations, and you can't write them out. Most of the people draw them on there. It's easier.
Right.
Except people aren't really good drawers. So
right.
So we get these prescriptions in, and so what I would do is I started to do some designing, and I was whiting stuff out and kind of drawing the designs on there for the technicians. And for us, how it worked is we had a 3-piece carbon copy prescription. So the doctor would fill the prescription out. They would take the pink copy, which is the last copy, which you couldn't see anything on it anyways.
The least detailed one.
Right, exactly. There's something on there. It looks like some line. Maybe it's some blimp that a kid drew on it. But so we'd get the white copy and then the yellow copy. Those were the last 2 copies that were left. And so we'd get that, we would design it, and all my notes, everything that would go on there, anything that was, all the parts that are drawn on there, they'd end up on the yellow copy, which is the second carbon copy, and that would go to billing. And then the white prescription would go to the technicians. And the billing took forever. We had a ton of mistakes because they're pretty much making line items off of everything there. So 4 ball class, and then they add it up.
Right.
1 bow and it's this, and 1 this and it's that, and then hopefully it's added up correctly, and 1 wrong decimal point and you're in trouble. So I'm sitting there designing and drawing this, and I'm thinking, okay, so is there a way that I could draw this at the same time on the computer and it would give it a price? Why not? Because I'm pretty much just graphically drawing an invoice. So because all that information gets translated into cost. So that's where the idea started. It's turned into a whole different thing, but when it first started, it was, well, we're having tons of billing mistakes, and how can I turn my drawings into a bill, into an invoice?
where you draw an Adams class and it charges $5 or $7,
exactly.
Whatever you set.
Yeah, exactly. Instead of it going to somebody else who doesn't even know what an Adams clasp is.
Right, exactly. Yeah. That's the front desk is communication is key there.
Right, exactly. So that was the advent of it. We took it to a software company, and it's just funny because they don't know the lab business, and they looked at it and said, "Oh, sure, yeah, of course we could do it." And then it turned into a very large project, because how the system works is it's very interactive. We wanted to have something where the user was clicking and dragging parts over. You're clicking and dragging a labial bow onto what we call the canvas, and you're able to move that and manipulate that all in one area, all on the screen. And it's very interactive and very user-friendly. But of course, in order to do anything like that, it's not easy to do. Anything that's simple on the web is probably very difficult to actually build. The stuff that's not simple on the web is stuff that probably took a day to build. So those were a lot of challenges when we first started. And then it started to expand into, well, if I'm doing all this on my end, can we create some kind of account where the doctor can do it then? And have them start designing their cases, because they should be the ones putting the names in and designing the cases, and they want to do stuff digitally, and that's how it started. And
yes, them type out the name instead of write it real quick.
Right.
And type out everything so that you can actually read it.
Right, because that's the big disconnect, is where you have these prescriptions, the doctors fly through it because maybe they don't care, or maybe they're in a hurry, except on the lab side, well, that's the most important piece of information that we have. that's what we're
Yes.
making, and I think a lot of doctors take that for granted. So it's
And
very
it's a legal
difficult.
document. It's a legal
Absolutely.
document. Yeah.
Right. You're in Texas, so they actually put a lot more importance on that document. In New York here, I don't think they don't even look at it as anything except for just a work order. But I think the
Oh
states
yeah.
are cracking
Yeah.
down on it more because
Right.
it's a prescription. We're making something that's going in somebody's mouth, and it's going to do some things to that. It's going to expand or it's going to move teeth, and there's something that's some dental procedure that's taking place that we're participating in. So I want to know what we're supposed to be making. I want to be able to do a good job, and I don't want a case coming back because, that ball clasp looked like a smiley face, on the prescription.
Right. Oh no,
So
that was a holding bar, not a ball
exactly,
class.
exactly. So what it's turned into now, it's turned into we saw people be interested in it, and so we built it out, and we spent the past 3 years building this out into a system where now doctors can sign up for a free account, and we've built a network where doctors can connect to laboratories who are EasyRx powered, and a doctor doesn't need to send it to a lab. Maybe they have an in-house lab that they can manage. Maybe they want to manage prescriptions so that the doctor, even if they're sending cases, they can actually start creating digital prescriptions for all their cases. They print it out and they send it to the lab. An EasyRx powered lab can take that and they can run it into their system. So it's this, so they can take it and they can check it in, they can check it out, they can bill it. There's attachments and files, and it's all one big network. And that's kind of how we built it. So we're trying to connect doctors and laboratories through this because we have the ability to now. With the networking capabilities of the internet, you can push this stuff through. So it's almost building, this marketplace in a way where doctors can go and create prescriptions, and they can send it to their labs that they use, and they can send it to a lab down the street, or they can send it to a big lab or wherever they want. But this digital prescription is that starting point now, and how we're looking at it with the with 3D printing, this is going to be that portal. So you can export your STL file, which is that CAD/CAM 3D file, push that directly into a prescription. So you're actually creating this package in a way that's got a prescription that you can read. It's got a 3D file, and that just all ends up on the lab side. And then with the click of a button, they can do whatever they want with it. And now they have a prescription that's easy to deal with.
Now there was something you mentioned at the conference about HIPAA and emails. Now we all communicate with emails right now with the doctor,
right?
And that's the newest technology, or even phone call. But with this, you can communicate within the script of that patient.
Absolutely. So you're communicating within a network, and it's a secure network. There's military-grade security that's HIPAA compliant. So anything that's within the system is all encrypted. So nothing can be stolen. Nothing. It's all secured, and which meets HIPAA requirements. So that you're within a network where your data is safe. And I know a lot of people take it for granted, but even an email, an email is not secure, and it's a HIPAA violation if a doctor is to send me any data over an email about a patient. If that patient name ends up anywhere outside of a secured network, it's a violation. And there's heavy fines for things like that too.
That's what surprised me, and I was like, oh, I'm guilty of that, because the doctor would be like, this is for patient so-and-so, please read over this PDF, and I didn't even think about that.
Right, and it's all unsecured because email's not secure. It's over, it's usually over Gmail or Hotmail. There's viruses that get in there. There's all types of things that could go wrong.
The NSA.
Exactly. They're watching us right now.
Yeah, exactly.
So when you have things like that, that's going to be really important. I don't think people put a lot of importance on that. I think they, it's just a patient and they need a retainer. I want to be able to talk to my lab guys. Well, that patient doesn't want you, sending that data over an unsecured line, and that's what email is. So there's heavy rules about that are coming out. There are, I guess the big thing too is that data is secure too. So say that you have patient data in the doctor's office and it's on a server. If that server gets stolen, there's and that patient data isn't encrypted. Well, there's if I just read something where the biggest fines for HIPAA violations, and these are $500,000 on some of these, and it's usually a doctor's and a server got stolen, and they had access to patient data. So there's massive fines, and people don't think about that. So we have to start understanding that, because as we're doing transmissions back and forth, it's not going through the mail. I don't think it'll be going through the mail anymore. Things like EasyRx are replacing the mail service, because the digital service, the digital files are coming, and it's not, you're not slapping a sticker on it. You're just pushing it through a portal.
And that's one way, but going back out,
right?
You can just send just the retainer.
Absolutely, right. You don't even have to have a patient name if you don't want. Maybe there's ID numbers. I know that some of the states have talked about, no patient name. A patient is not a patient name anymore. It's just an ID number, and that's the number that's on the retainer. Who knows what'll happen.
Well, and let me go off subject a little bit now. In the state of Texas, we have to put the patient name in the retainer. If it's got enough acrylic and it's removable, you have to put some form of ID in there, and that would be great if you could put a number, and then that way the doctor can look it up.
Right. Yeah, I've heard about that. I know that it had to do with it was more around 9/11 when they made that law, where dentures had to have an ID in it, retainers had to have an ID in it, just for identification in case there was a disaster.
Right.
It was Homeland Security made this law about that. I remember when they did that. But yeah, it's the patient name is in there, so maybe there's a way to replace that. But some of these things are going to be coming to light, and this is why the whole lab atmosphere is going to change because of things like this, which is, it's got its pros and cons. But at the same time, are we going to be able to transition into this kind of thing? Are we going to be able to work with this? How's it going to actually affect us? And are we going to be able to, survive these transitions? So that was one of the things as the laboratory we were looking at. We wanted to make sure that we were still viable. We want to make sure that we can make these changes because for me personally, I'm coming up in another generation of this lab. It was run a certain way. When my dad did it, there wasn't technology there, but now doctors are expecting that. So we have to make sure that we're ahead of the game. We can, those are the things that I think about, making sure that we can actually stay viable to the doctors. Because if a doctor is printing and scanning and doing all this cool technology stuff, and us as a lab, can't offer those services, well, they're going to find somebody that does.
Right.
And it's already tough as it is with in-house labs that are happening, and a lot of the work's going in there. And maybe with digital technology, they'll start going back out to a lab. But is the lab going to have the capabilities to actually offer it?
And I actually got to watch this happen when I was an ortho assistant. The doctor I worked for was monitoring digital x-rays, and he kept watching it, and then there was a certain point where he took the plunge, and he was like, all right, now I'm ready. And okay. I think each doctor's going to do the same thing with digital impressions. There's going to be a point where it's going to be different for every doctor, but there's going to be a point where something gets turned in their head, and they're like, okay, I'm ready. Let's do this. Hey, lab guy, I'm starting to take digital impressions. Can you accept them? I was like, I don't know.
Right, and that's the whole thing. And printing technology is going to change much quickly. Very quickly in the future too. So, the next, who knows? The printer. We got a printer. I'm sure it'll be out of date in a couple of years because a new printer is going to come out, and it's going to be able to print material faster and cheap, and maybe we're printing retainers out on it because it accepts, an acrylic that is stable, in the mouth, and all that stuff is going to be there. And are we going to be ready? So, and I don't want to get into all the fear stuff, but at the same time, if you're not moving forward, you're moving backwards, especially now when things are moving forward so fast.
And my backup plan is that Stratasys company.
Right.
And I suggest this to labs around the country. Find your closest 3D printing company that sells it to dental labs. Most of the time, they will accept a scan for you and will print it for you, and for probably a small fee or maybe even free, just so they can get your business in the future. And so they are 5 minutes from a lab. And so if a doctor ever calls me up and says, hey, can you accept a digital scan, I'd be like, yes, send it to them, and as that business grows, we can start looking into buying your printer. But getting back to EasyRx, it would be nice to have it in a file with the doctor's, the patient's name and everything.
Right, because what we see, I see it where a lot of the real big labs, they've invested a lot of money and they have like a portal, and you log into the portal for say Big Lab XYZ, and you have to upload your file. The doctor uploads their file, but they also have to go and find the PDF for that prescription. So they find a PDF that's digital, they fill it all out, and then they upload that. And I'm thinking to myself, that kind of technology was being used back in 15 years ago, these digital PDFs, and it's like, well, there's technology that's out there. You should be able to have like one experience where you're still not filling something out. You're not filling out a PDF. Maybe you're just creating data, which is like this, this digital prescription. And the beauty of the whole thing is you can actually use this data. So the lab gets, say for example, the lab gets this PDF that's attached with this file. Well, the only thing that the lab can do is print out that PDF. With EasyRx, data is being created so that Adams is on the 6 right there, and the Bow is on the 3 to 3, and there's a price to that. So we know how much the price of that appliance is. So if we're running all our prescriptions, say that written prescriptions come through, well, we take those RXs and we create digital EasyRxs with those. So all of our prescriptions have been turned into digital ones. They're all in the cloud, and we can actually run reports on those now. Now we know how many retainers have come through. Now we know our sales, based on all of, that's, how many Adams have we done? How many, bows have we done? How many bows did this technician do?
That's a good, I like that feature.
Right. So there's so much that you can do with the information. So if it came in as a PDF, well, you can't really get that information. It's just that piece of that piece of digital paper in a way. So EasyRx really takes it to that next level where it provides the lab with a way to do it. And it's I guess the big thing, it's coming from ortho guys. My great granddad was an orthodontist. My granddad was an orthodontist. My uncle's an orthodontist. And my dad's a lab guy. So it's like 4th generation teeth. That are all the way down. But this, it's ortho specific. So you're not stuck. A lab is like, okay, maybe looking for some kind of software, and the only thing you can find is dental software. And that's all that's really there. So this really is focusing specifically on orthodontics, but more importantly, the prescription, because that's where all the data comes from. If you want to do billing, where's it coming from? It's coming from the RX. If you want to do any kind of employee tracking, or if you want to get a case and start working on it, well, it comes from the RX. Without that, there's nothing. So that we're looking at it that way, taking a different spin on the whole management system.
Well, and I put a quote in the notes for this, like having a virtual office assistant or front office person. And if the doctor is filling out the prescription, just like you said, why is it not already charging for everything he draws? It's automatically charging, and I thought that was genius. And then you just kind of skip that, and not that they'll lose the job. You can train them to pumice,
exactly,
and help out in production.
Yeah, get them in the lab.
They're not really helping with production at that point. So I like the idea of switching someone around where they can. I guess even if you get a prescription in, entering it in is even easier.
Right, because it's it saves all the templates for a doctor. So if you get a prescription in from Dr. Smith, and his upper Hawley is 2 Adams, maybe ball class between the buys and a 3 to 3 bow. You're putting the information as far as the doctor and the patient name, when it's going out. But when you have to design the case, you're just pressing one of the templates that are specific to the doctor. So it makes it really fast to actually get those doctor notes up into a prescription. It's all very doctor specific, so it saves all the different preferences and all the different templates per doctor, on this canvas. So it makes it easy for the smaller guy to go in, create a prescription. It really can take that the smaller to medium sized lab and really give them a cutting edge advantage just right off the bat.
Well, yeah. Let me ask you, how many of your doctors that they were still writing old prescriptions, and you were entering them in the computer? Were you able to give the keys to them? I mean, have you had some transfer over? You're like, hey, look, all your stuff's online. We've been putting it on there for years.
Right.
So here's the keys to it.
Right, and that's exactly what we do. So when we create, and it's not say for OrthoDent. It's not OrthoDent's system, and the doctors are logging into OrthoDent's account. The doctor's actually logging into their own account, so they can see all their prescriptions. and they can just happen to connect with OrthoDent and send OrthoDent cases. So when they start to understand that, they're like, okay, so I don't have to have a password for this lab and a password for this lab and a password for this lab. So then they start to jump on, and then they can see all the invoices for all the labs they're using. They can see all the prescriptions from all the labs that their cases are at. So you have a queue. Okay, so patient here is for this over at this lab. Patient here is at this lab because those are the prescriptions I made. So doctors are able to jump on, and it's the feedback I've gotten, especially for doctors who say they have multiple offices. They can see where these cases are supposed to be shipped to, and there's a lot of transparency as far as what's happening with your prescriptions now. A lot more than you could get before.
Right. That was funny. That just reminded me of sometimes we get the call before they look for the case in the back. Hey, have you seen this case? And I'd have to go through the driver log, and like, wait, we delivered that 2 days ago. Oh, let me check the back. I was like,
I know, right.
If you could have just logged in and checked the cases yourself, you'd save me a phone call and searching through my lab for a retainer that I did 2 days ago that nobody checked in the back.
Right. So you can start actually getting calls, maybe as far as like a consulting a case, or some of the fun phone calls, as opposed to the office manager saying, "All right, where's the case, guys?" It's like, guys, I sent this to you like 3 days ago, and then you're bantering back and forth on where it's at.
Right.
And they can log in, and because we're using EasyRx internally too, so what we see, they see. So we can see when we shipped it out. It says it was submitted this date. It arrived here. We sent it out this day, and it was already shipped out, and you should have it right now. And then we'll look up UPS tracking, and then you're able to see exactly what's happening. So it's.
So you've incorporated UPS into EasyRx also.
Right. So it's more of a customization, but we can work with UPS if a lab wants to ship out all your cases because UPS has some pretty user-friendly stuff where systems can communicate. That's the big thing is what we're seeing now with a lot of these web tools is they can start communicate with each other. So if you're using some like invoicing system, or if you're using, so they say like Salesforce, they all have these different tools that can help you communicate between the two.
Like a API. I guess
exactly. That's exactly what it is, and you really don't hear that. You don't hear that.
One nerd to another. I know where you're coming from.
Right.
And that's why I was getting to the start of it. Did you start with the prescription, or start with that and then the software, the practice management software evolved from that?
It was kind of a combination of. It started with the prescription workspace, and that's the horsepower of the whole system. That's where you go to and you're designing cases, and then it's from there where we wrapped pretty much everything around that. So patient data and management's all wrapped around that. Cases are all based off of that. So that's the meat of the system, and that's what people are most interested in, is that graphical part of it. The clicking and dragging. And sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Let's look at because I thought this was great, and
sure.
A few years ago I was trying to do a iPad app that they could do that and they could save it and stuff. But then I saw I was tracking you for years, and I was like, please don't keep this to yourself.
Right.
Spread it among the other labs. And when you announced that, I was like, yay! I'm so excited.
Right, because when we started. We presented it at the AAO one year, and a bunch of because there's the labs kind of get together at the AAO and they have some dinner. So if anybody's at the AAO one of these years, we have something, and Don Inman gets it all together, and we just kind of go over lab stuff, and it's really fantastic. So I showed it at one of those, and a lot of the guys said, "Oh, this is pretty awesome," but it's nobody really jumped on board, and this was a couple of years ago. So it's been the traction of something like this is hard to gain only because it's so new, it's so different. And it only hasn't been really just in the past, maybe year where we've seen people a lot more interested in it, and it's starting to really push through into some pretty big labs are starting to use the system.
Well, I think the more people use web apps in their day-to-day lives, the more their brain switches to a more web app thinking instead of a paper thinking. Because to me, we're the last ones. We're the last. Everything's a paper society, or
Right.
the doctors are paperless. You know, they have digital X-rays. They don't have charts anymore. It's all on the computer, but they're
Right.
still writing paper prescriptions. And that was
Right.
my turning point in my head for this. But go ahead.
Actually, yeah, that's exactly what it is. So what we have here, so we have a doctor's account, and I'm looking at our doctor's account. So a doctor logs in, and we got a bunch of tools that we can use. We're looking at here, you know, I have some prescriptions that are saved. Maybe I haven't submitted them, and then I got a queue of submitted prescriptions right here.
Sorry, is this? Are we looking at the lab side or the doctor side?
This is the doctor side.
No. Okay. So this is what the doctor would see.
Right. So we'll start
Okay.
with the doctor because this is where the inception of a prescription can actually start, where it should start actually.
Yes.
You know, it's from the doctor side. So you know, and we know that we're in competition between the pen and paper. So we wanted to build something that's pretty robust for the doctor, so that they jump on board. So with something like this, you know, we have this doctor, you know, this doctor and these patients, and here's the laboratories that they've been sent to. Here's the date that are needed. So say that your doctor received that case, but they have no idea where it is, and they give you that call. Well, if they use this, when the case came in, they can actually say whether or not it was received or not, and then on what day it was received.
Oh, okay.
So it kind of eliminates a lot of those calls right away. Doctors can they can go directly into their system and actually view prescriptions. So if we go into this case right here, you know, this is an EasyRx that was created. On the left-hand side, the doctor can see when it was submitted, when it got checked in at the lab, when it was completed, and when it was shipped. And the date. So this lab is very efficient, as you can see.
Yes, that was quick.
But you have a graphical representation of this prescription here. You know, it's atoms on the sixes, rests, and a 3-3 labial bow. We're trimming the acrylic, you know, distal to the sixes. My techs know exactly what to do here.
Yes.
With this case, you know, it shows all the different parts. A consultation call was needed for this one. I got my colors right through here, and this has different files that are attached. So we have an upper and lower STL file. So it's an example case, but this would be, you know, this would get sent to the lab, and the lab can download the files and send them right to a 3D printer. We have the case, exactly what we're going to do, and it streamlines the whole process. So we have a lot of information that's here that the doctor can see, and you know, it provides them the ability to track their cases, look at their cases, and the one thing is all of their cases are stored now. They don't have to store that paper prescription somewhere, because what most people are doing is they'll write the script out, and they may be all gung-ho for paperless, so they take that piece of paper and they'll scan it and then throw it out. You know, here
Right.
it's kind of defeating the purpose a little bit.
Right.
So here, you know, we have all, you know, the doctor has it all saved. So let's actually create a prescription. So if I'm the doctor, I'm gonna, you know, put in the last name. You know, this patient already exists. What laboratory I'm going to send it to? Maybe it's the in-house lab or the lab down the street. Any kind of allergies that patient might have, you know, monomer allergy,
good.
especially like nickel-free is a big thing.
Yes.
So this
Yes.
gets saved directly in the patient's profile if I put a metal allergy in there, so that you know you have to use like a titanium screw or a nickel-free wire on something. So it's one of the things we put in there, so the doctor's like, yeah, it gives you, you know, it's better patient experience. So this is the prescription workspace here, and this is where everything, you know, all the designing is done. So the doctor goes in, and what they'll simply do is on the left-hand side, we got a parts library. We'll open it up, let's just say some removables, and I got my labial bow, and I'm just going to click and drag a bow over to it. And I have little handles here that I can drag this around. You know, I can get very specific. You know, I got my phase 1 here, maybe my retention all the way through here. We'll put some clasping on here. Maybe we'll put we'll drop in atoms here, drop in atoms here. I got my acrylic here, so I'm hovering over, I'm activating a part, and I can, you know, just start to move this anywhere I want here. And get very specific exactly what we need. I have templates down here, so this is very specific to me, so it's cool to click and drag. Let's say I want my lower retainer, so let's click add, and it gets me directly onto the, you know, my stuff right onto the canvas. You know, I can create some templates, say for a 2-to-2. Instead of dragging them over, I'll just click my springs here. So I got my springs right here. I can right click on here, and I can flip this part. Say I got to turn that around.
Excellent.
So I have a ton of control over my actual prescription here, and it's all done very interactively. We've been building out the system, so we got tons of parts, tons of things that we offer. We're building out new parts all the time. So this is a very readable prescription. I know where this spring's going. I know which direction it's going. I know where I'm trimming this acrylic. For some labs, go ahead.
You may be about to answer it. Can some labs send you a drawing and say, this is how this doctor asked for a delta class, something, and this is how he draws it? And can you put that in? And
absolutely.
And honestly, I don't know how he came up with, because bad thing about ortho, there's about 4 names for one appliance. Every doctor's named it after themselves.
Of course.
And so, how'd you come up with what name to use, and can you change the name?
So one of the things we're trying to do is we're trying to standardize these parts. So a doctor asks for a recurve spring. Well, what is that? Is it a finger spring? Is it a recurve spring? Is it an S spring? All these different names for different parts. So what we're trying to do is figure out what these actual names are. And, we're trying to work with, I'd love to be able to work with organizations, such as, the American Orthodontics Association, and say, all right, what are what are these standard parts? What are doctors using? Because the problem that we'd like to solve, if we could, is trying to standardize the names of the parts. So any doctor can come in and say, here's what it is, and the lab knows what it is. It's like if you went into a pharmacy and, I don't know, amoxicillin was under like 4 or 5 different names, different street names, or this is what our lab calls it, So, we want to try to figure out different ways to standardize that. And we just obviously chose these just because it's what we know. So we can't really change the names because it would be very confusing. So a doctor would log in to one lab, and that that finger spring is now named a recurve spring. So it makes it very confusing for the doctor.
Well, and another thing you said is we're very visual, the lab guys. So the drawing's just as important as what you name it. So you see those Z springs, is what I call them.
There you go. Exactly.
So I know exactly what that is, no matter what it's called, and then I'm sure I'll get used to what it's called in here, and then like the technicians, they just need to see the picture.
Right, and that's because we're trying to find a way of making a universal prescription, and if somebody is looking at this prescription here, maybe they only speak French, or maybe they speak Chinese, or maybe they speak English. You look at this and you know exactly what to build.
Yes.
The upper, you may not know what upper stands for if you can read it, a different language. But here it's almost like this universal language of what we're building here. So one of the things that it's off into the future, but if a lab actually thinks about it, and if you're doing 3D printing and you're able to get digital cases, well, you can accept digital cases from anywhere. And
that's true.
You can
be a worldwide lab.
Well, you could, or maybe just say more of a national lab, or broaden your region out. Maybe a lab sticks in that UPS area where it's a 1-day shipping, for ground, but they want to expand out, but maybe they're afraid of the shipping. Well, if they're 3D printing, you can accept it from anywhere, and maybe you do second-day air back out because you're saving on the shipping. But you can get it quicker, and you can service a lot more people. And I think that labs have to understand that, and not get, not box themselves in too much. So I think that's a pretty cool offering. But something like this, it's all universal. So let's jump in real quickly. So we have a color chart here. So you got to pick the color. So this is a color chart that we've created, and there's different color combinations. There's different things that we can do. Say that, it'd be, I saw what you have. Your stuff is awesome. By the way, I love the interaction of it. So if you were to have, say, your watermelon, you pick that, and then maybe there's different sparkles that you do with that watermelon. Copy that to the lower, and then you save it. So it's quick. We wanted to have something where they go and they pick the color, and then they're out. They're in and out. Because doctors, they look at it like, oh my goodness, this is so cool looking. I love this. And then they start to go and they start clicking and dragging stuff. And then one of the complaints we got in the beginning when we started was, well, this is taking forever. So then we started to build out templates and build out faster and better ways to do stuff. So they're really in and out, and they can do it. They can create a prescription in less than 60 seconds.
And I bet you they start getting to where they just go ahead and do the template and then make changes.
That's
instead of
exactly what
building
it
out
is.
a new one.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. So a doctor, you can clear the parts here, and so a doctor comes in. They have their upper and lower haulies. They click, they pick their color, and then they check out and they're out the door. That's pretty much what it is.
Nice.
So they can leave some comments on the case if they want. A couple comments that are here. You can leave comments specific on the parts. I can leave a comment based on this labial bow directly on that. I can reset the teeth if I want to. So for spring aligners, I'll reset this tooth and this tooth. So we'll do some resets right here. That indicates to the lab we're going to reset this, and maybe we'll, if I want to delete something, I'll just delete it here. Jump into, say, a spring aligner here and say upper spring aligner. So now we're going to reset those teeth. So now I know exactly what to do. My techs know exactly what to do. It's already, for techs that have the invoice, or for labs with the invoicing module, this is already ready to get billed out by the time the lab gets it. So we have a lot of different features that are here. One of the cool things that we just built out was this indirect bonding. I love this. We don't do indirect bonding, but a lot of labs do.
Yeah, we don't do it either, but I was curious about it.
Right. So you can actually just start clicking teeth, and you actually have brackets that are being put up there.
Oh, that's cool.
You can of course we have templates that are quick. So let's do 6 to 6 right there. For those who are doing lingual brackets, we'll do, say, 6 to 6 here, and these drawings come up exactly what they look like.
Oh,
and
wow.
You got the teeth that are there. Say that we're including some arch wires. We'll put some arch wires up there. You can see that the arch wire actually goes into it, and it looks just like a case.
It does.
That needs to get done.
Now, let's say in the future they're going to extract fours. So can you unclick fours?
Well, what you would do is, so we would click extract, and
there it is.
We would say the lower 4. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to click this red little button here, and this is extracted, and the bracket goes away.
Removed it, and the wire spans across it. That's nice.
Because the wire's still going to be there.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and say we'll extract, these last buys right here. So now we know exactly what we're going to be doing here. So the system, we built the system to kind of know what's happening. All the different hiccups. The one that we want to try to make something that's easy. It's called EasyRx, so it needs to be easy. At least we're trying for it to be. So that's so we have graphicals and graphics to kind of represent all of this. And then of course it's a web-based system. So people like to do shopping, and we kind of kept it. There's a lot that's here, but similar. So when you're done, you check out. You're checking out your case, filling in some pieces of information on this next page here, and what doctor that's there. Do you need a consultation call? What's the models that you're sending? I'm sending plaster models with this. Any coupons that may be there. So there's a lot of different things that are here, for the doctors, so that we know. So we want to know what doctor. We want to know where we need to ship it. We want to know what date they need it by. Maybe the appointment's at a different office as opposed to where it's being shipped to.
That happens a lot more than you think.
Oh, it happens all the time. And these are all the things that we see constantly. Any kind of banding issues that we need to do if we're providing bands or setting bands, or because all that has a price. So the lab will, the practice will provide the model and bands to be placed by the lab. Well, that we can set the price for that, for labor if they're providing the bands. So we'll check this case out, and it gives me a nice yay that everything is good. And it got submitted, so I can print this out if I want to and send it with the case. If it's a digital case, then the lab already has it, and it's ready for fabrication. So the lab, the lab now has a case, and they know exactly what to do. They know it's here. They have notes. It's readable, and now there's a digital record of this too. So you're not actually, trying to take your script, and when a doctor calls and says, "Hey, I want to go over this case," and then you got to sift through, all the different prescriptions from a month ago. Here, you can just quickly find something and say, "Yep, here's what we did. Here's what was there." So the customer service is really cool, which you can do. You can answer a question on the phone without saying, "Hold on for a second. Let me go find that script."
Let me go pull out the big file cabinet full of scripts from the past month.
Right.
Or if it's even older, the box that it's in.
Exactly. So we don't save any scripts anymore. We actually don't have any paper prescriptions because it's all saved. It's all saved in here. These are now documents. We have a couple shortcuts where we do scan the paper prescriptions, and they go directly into the patient's file. So we have all of the records that are there, and it's all done very simple and very fast and effective. So
nice.
Yeah.
Well, that is cool. And how long? Let's see. How long do you think it would take? setup-wise for a lab? Because I know you got to price each piece, and if you're not
Right.
doing that currently, if you're charging full price, all-in-one price is what I'm thinking of. You need to go in there and go, how much is atoms, how much is labial bow? Because that's how this is done, is piecework.
Right. So yeah, and it's all done kind of a la carte. It's the way that the system knows, because you can have so many different haulies, and so it is broken up individually. You know, the setup, I don't want to say it's too tedious because all you're doing is inputting prices on that end. So if you have the invoicing module and the production module, then you do need pricing, which is included in that. And you go into the pricing section and you just start. You go to the different parts that are there, and you have to give them a price. It does need you to do that, because at the end, you put the work in now to do it, and the setup is only a couple hours probably. But when you have an invoice, it's all done. It's all set. An invoice, say for example here, this is the doctor's area. They can check all their invoices. So let's take a look. So this case, has the invoice right here for them. So removable labial bow, acrylic, and 2 atoms. So this is an invoice that the lab did on this date, and it has everything all right here that they can see. So, but the system has it all tabulated. It's all done, and because if the lab can see the invoice, well, let's let the doctor see it. Because how many calls do you get that say, "Hey, I want to see my invoice"?
Right.
So,
yeah. Can you fax it over? I was like, I don't even know how to use a fax.
Right. Exactly. Do you have a fax number? They have fax numbers? So,
yeah. I don't even, people call me all the time. What's your fax number? I was like, we don't have a fax.
Right. So with this, they can save it as a PDF, send it off to their billing, and then they're good to go. They can see whether or not it was paid or not. But yeah, for the lab, it's setting it up. It's getting through all the different parts. If there's any parts that are specific to the lab, we can contract that stuff out, and we can do some custom drawings for the lab, especially like proprietary parts that the lab came up with. We're adding parts, but if it's something that's real funny that the lab has, we can always draw those.
Well, for example, like the Inman IPC.
Right.
That'd be something that, I have some of that, and I don't know if it's in there, but that would be something like Don Inman would ask for. Hey, can you make a little representation of?
Exactly. Right. Yeah. How do you deal with some of those proprietary things? And then we could for labs, if they have it, and we could make drawings of it. It's offered to the doctors, because it's a lab and a doctor network. So a doctor can go in there, and they're not if they go to a lab that offers it, well, they can see all those different parts for the lab. So the lab's able to showcase different things that they offer. So if a doctor goes to one prescription workspace for one lab, it may not have the same parts as another one.
Well, that was my next question. If I don't do Herbst, if I don't put a price, it's not listed or something like that.
What you do is you actually make that part inactive, and it doesn't show up in your parts library. So when you go to, if we went and edited the case here, what this parts library that's here for this laboratory, it's all set up exactly how the lab wants it to go. So, the labial bows that are in here are all based on, that preference. So say, for example, there's an RP under labial bows. It doesn't make any sense, but, for demo purposes. But, the lab can do that. The lab can put an RP under here if they want, or they can, soldered C-clasp, is near labial bow. Even though it's a class, but it's people with labial bows may need a soldered C-clasp, so it's right there for them.
Okay.
So this is all, it's all done by the lab.
Okay. Nice. That's one thing I was trying to do with my retainerdesigner.com, was have each lab uncheck the colors they don't have, and it's nice to see that you're able to do that. I haven't been able to do that yet.
Yeah, because the whole thing is done. It's all a big network, and there's so many different, the lab can have so many different features on their end, and then the doctor can see those on their end, and we brand this right here for the laboratory. So the doctor goes in to this lab's workspace. There's the lab's logos up here, so they know where they are. So there's some branding on here for the actual lab. So one of the things I would love to do is to be able to market the laboratories who are signing on to other doctors within the network. So it's you get a couple thousand doctors using the system. Well, the labs that are joining on are being exposed to those doctors. Because how the system works is the doctor, I'm in my doctor account. I'm not connected to any labs, and I go into my lab section here, and these are just examples of laboratories that we just put in labs I know. So we can actually connect to these laboratories. So if so this says I'm connected to this lab. So if I wanted to connect to, say, the second demo lab, I'd click connect to this lab, and it would show up in the labs that I'm connected with. So when I actually go and create a prescription, I can now choose the lab that I'm with. You can also the doctor can request a lab if they want, say that the lab down the street is there, but they're not an EasyRx powered lab. They can request a lab and their name shows up in here, but the lab actually doesn't get any cases. It's just for the doctor to be able to print out and actually manage all their scripts and where they're going. So even if it's something that a lab doesn't want to do, a doctor can still sign up, request the lab to go in there. There's no charge to the lab for that, but of course the lab doesn't get any features. Just kind of puts them into this doctor's area.
Right. So, and they'd still get the paper, but it's all printed out.
Right. Yeah, it's all printed out, and the lab can't do anything with it, but it's good for the doctor because they can now track exactly what it is. So that requested lab would show up maybe right here. This lab would say first demo lab or second demo lab or lab down the street or in-house lab, and now the doctor has an idea of what's happening too.
And they can track internal cases but the lab will still have to hire somebody to take that prescription, enter it in their software that they're using.
Right.
Which, by the way, there's no ortho software out there that I know of.
Not that I know of either, that I've seen.
Currently what I'm using is WinVoice, and that's really geared toward Crown and Bridge, and that's pretty much every software is geared toward Crown and Bridge, so it's very refreshing to see something geared straight toward ortho. Right,
which is cool. I don't see software companies saying I want to create an ortho software. I don't think that's ever going to happen. Maybe it will, but for us it came out of a need, and we needed something, we did it, and that's kind of how that inventions kind of started. And because it's not a huge market. Ortho is a very small niche in the dental market. So
yes, it is.
You have a system like this, and you have to be able to figure out how to actually be profitable with it, so that you can support your clients and have a good piece of software. So there's definitely some challenges in doing this, but at the same time, we think it's going to really benefit the industry in many different ways.
Well, excellent. If you may not know how to get out of screen share, you have to click screen share in upper left again to get out of it, just in case you felt like you were stuck in the screen.
All right, I am good. There we are. Okay.
Well, if a lab's interested, how would they get a hold of you? And I know pricing is going to be different for every lab.
Right. Well, we're doing pricing based on volume. And we do it based on volume because we can get the little guy in, and then we can get the big guy on, and it's all kind of the same based on the volume there. So it's a kind of what volume you fall into is kind of how the pricing is. So I guess it is different for every lab, but it's very consistent all the way through.
So if a lab, let's say a technician wants to go out on their own and start up a new lab, you would kind of work with them.
Right, absolutely.
If I went on my own, I'd love to start with this day one, and be able to pass out flyers. Hey, I'm almost all digital.
Right, and so what you would do exactly. So what you do is you would just call me on the phone. I make it very simple and I make it very accessible. So I have a conversation. We talk about the needs. We talk about what system may work for you, because we have a base system that can accept digital cases, but then we also have different modules that you could add onto it so that it fits the needs of every lab. So maybe they want production, they want invoicing, or they want some kind of workflow, or maybe they just want to get digital cases in, and then that's it, and they don't care about the data. They just want it, in a system that's digital, because they just say they want to use just the workspace. But we have a base price and then additional modules per month that they can add on. So you give me a call, we talk about the needs, we go over the pricing, and we set up with a system. We can set you up with a demo, and we'll go through a webinar, we'll show you how to use it, and then you can start playing around with it. And then if it's something that you're interested in doing, then we can go to the next step, and we can start getting into, start building a relationship on figuring out what's going to work with the lab, and we take you all the way through it. It's not as if you're trying to make tickets if you have a problem. You can just call me on the phone. You call me on the phone, you send me an email, and it's so small. It's such a small niche. It's not as if there's a million people out there. So you just call me on the phone, and we'll just keep going and just figure out problems, make it work for you, look at workflow, and just pretty much go from there until you're up and running.
And I think that's a good example of this generation of orthodontic owners. You're talking about Dental Lab Network, and you talk about Facebook, which, by the way, if you're familiar with Facebook and the Ortho Lab Association?
Yeah, the Association of Orthodontic Labs, AOL.
Yeah, so which you created and has, I think, just exploded. And you just see the sharing that's going on with Ortho Labs, because your father was probably by himself without any help. I know when I first started, there was nothing out there, and so that's when I started making videos of what I do and putting it online, and I get emails all the time. Thank you. I know now how to bend to Adam's class, because there's no book. There's 2 books, and there's expensive videos, and so you are starting a new generation and pushing it forward, and we really appreciate that.
Oh, sure.
I'm really appreciative that you open this up to other labs, and it just it's a OrthoDent only prescription thing.
Right, because that's what we saw. Everybody, people like to keep stuff close to the chest, which is good. I know you have to do that in some instances, but at the same time, if you have these tools, let's try to use them. Plus, everybody's got a Facebook page. Everybody talks about things, and I know it has its limits on things, but when it comes to business, I think you want to have these tools and these forums to be able to run things by other people. I had a question a couple weeks ago. It's like, I need to know what to do with this certain appliance. What do you guys do? It was on a mouth guard. It's like, I want to put a decal in here. How do I do that? And then 4 responses come in, and then they push me somewhere else and say, here's all the instructions. And then Great Lakes has the instructions. I watch it, and I get the appliance out. So things like that I think there's something, it's valuable, and it's all you guys that are actually doing that and participating. Without the participants, then there's nothing there. It's just this open space. So it's all the users that are in there, which is awesome. You got international users in there. What are they doing in Europe? And they're showing the way that they do things, but their banding is totally different. If you know what it is. Yeah,
and it's neat to see international, and they do all sorts of different appliances. I mean, I see some art. I mean, it looks like art. These bins, and they're going all over the place. And, and I was like, I've never even seen that appliance before.
I know. Yeah, they're casting out the band. They cast the bands. It's just there's just a lot that's there. So it's really cool to see. So yeah, if you're interested in EasyRx, you can definitely call me. The number is, I don't know if I heard it yet. It's 888-340-3751, or you can go to EasyRxOrtho.com, and that'll get you all the information right there too. How the system works is it's a base system, and you can just add modules onto it, whatever works for the laboratory.
So it just starts with the workspace, the prescription part for. Is that your base? Because you said that's what everything else attaches to.
Right. Well, it's pretty much you have a dashboard, and you have cases that have been submitted or created. So a lab can still keep all of their files, online. They can really make a cloud jump if they want, and manage all their cases online by just creating prescriptions. So that's it. A lab's able to do that with that basic system, where it's just a queue of all the cases that have been created, have been submitted. You can edit, view, do all the cool things with the canvas, and just kind of handle the documentation. The next one that we have, what's called Easy Flow. It's check in, check out. Your doctors can see when a case comes in, has arrived. You can check it out so they know when it's been shipped. We got Easy Invoice, so you can invoice all these cases, do pricing. You can look at reports. You can see how the lab's actually doing for the day. And the last thing is Easy Production, where you can see how the lab is doing as a whole. You can see reports. You can see how many sales there are. You can see clients that have maybe in January for some reason their sales are low. Well, it shows you that, and then you can see trends of them. Maybe they haven't sent you something in 3 months. Well, you'll see a graph that shows that. It's like, okay, maybe I need to call this person because this is a really long vacation, or they're using somebody else.
Yeah, exactly. And
So all those things are in there, but maybe it's stuff that you might use, may not use. So we try to make it flexible for the laboratory so that they can find a package that works for them.
and they could slowly add on as they go. And,
Absolutely.
That's excellent. Well, we're hitting the end of the hour, so I know we both probably need to go start bending some wires. So
right. Yeah.
I'll end this here and give out your website and your number again.
Sure. So the website is www.easyrxortho.com, and you can call me at 888-340-3751.
Okay. And
there we go.
Again, thank you for being my guinea pig and
sure, this is
coming
awesome.
on board, and and we'll have to do it again for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
And maybe talk maybe you can show us some digital print ups and stuff like that.
Sure. Yeah, my pleasure.
And again, this is Kay Tippett signing off. Again, my blog is designerretainer.com, and we'll see y'all next time.
All right.